available student. Please keep yourself muted during the presentations and put questions in the chat. So now I am going to turn it over to Samantha.
Thank you, Diane. Hello, everyone. My name is Samantha Thomas, and I am an administrative analyst working in the DEP side of the New Jersey Water Bank. I am also the technical assistance team lead for the New Jersey Water Bank Technical Assistance Program. So I have a fair amount of experience in assisting communities and water systems with accessing funding from the water bank. So today I have a short presentation to go over the program a bit, our intended use plans, and some recent changes that we've had in our program in terms of financing and technical assistance. Next slide, please. The New Jersey Water Bank is a partnership between the Department of Environmental Protection and the I-Bank, which administers the Clean Water and Drinking Water State Revolving Funds. The Water Bank can fund a variety of eligible clean water and drinking water projects with below market rate loans, generous principal forgiveness for priority projects, such as combined sewer overflows and lead service line replacement, and can provide new technical assistance and grant funding for disadvantaged communities. The Technical Assistance Program can connect communities with TA providers to assist with community engagement, early project management, and system assessments such as asset management planning and capital improvement plans. All communities participating in our technical assistance, the Water Systems Engineering TA program, or EPA-led Accelerator and GLOW programs are eligible for our planning and design grant funding. That's funding for up to $2 million per state fiscal year per borrower. You can visit our website at dep.nj.gov/WIP. That's WIIP to learn more. You can find more information about technical assistance under the New Jersey Water Bank tab and the navigation bar. Some of our other important information on this website includes our intended use plans, which I'll go over shortly. And we have some new requirements for lead service line replacement projects. And there's a lot of important guidance and documents under the Guidance and Forms tab. Next slide. So the tab up top, the intended use plan tab, takes you to our current and proposed intended use plans, which have all of the information you need to know about available funding packages for each fiscal year and important program information such as ranking methodology and the affordability criteria. Every year, the program proposes an intended use plan for the following state fiscal year and allows for public comment both orally at our public hearings or written and sent to the Water Bank email. The program notifies stakeholders when the proposed IUP is published. If you would like to receive those notifications and you do not yet, you can give us your email. There's a Contact Us tab in the navigation bar, so you can give us your contact information there. If you are a borrower, taking a look at our current intended use plan should always be your first step to assess your water infrastructure financing options. For example, this state fiscal year 2025, we had a lot of changes, a lot of big changes to our funding packages versus the previous years. We tiered our affordability packages to offer more principal forgiveness to the most disadvantaged communities, while our Tier 2 communities continued receiving the same amount of principal forgiveness as previous years. We also removed funding package caps and increased the percentage of DEP loan split, meaning that mostly all of our funding packages now offer a 75% DEP interest-free loan and a 25% AAA market rate iBank loan. So this year we have offered more savings than ever through this program. Next slide. The State Fiscal Year 2026 intended use plan, which will soon be published and go into effect July 1st, did not really see any significant changes for our financing packages. However, the affordability criteria has undergone an update. The existing source data for this current year's affordability criteria is from 2019, which is pre-COVID data, where the state average median household income was $85,245. We have updated the source data for our affordability criteria calculations in State Fiscal Year 2026, where the state average median household income increased by over $10,000 to $97,126. Another post-COVID change you might notice is that the population trend has increased substantially, along with the increase in the median household income across the state. The source data will also utilize annual average municipal unemployment data rather than county data for more accurate calculations. Next slide. So we noticed that the distribution of median household income across New Jersey had decreased the number of municipalities that are generally at or below 80% of the state average median household income. So to maintain the number of eligible municipalities, the program needed to increase that threshold and decided to adjust the affordability score threshold to the lowest 25% of all municipalities. This increased the threshold from 80.99 to 86.19. Binding the eligibility to the lowest scoring 25% maintains the number of eligible communities to about 141 each year. The program will continue to update the source data for the affordability criteria every 3 years and has implemented a grandfathering policy to allow projects which have either submitted a project report to the program for the loan application or are receiving technical assistance before the state fiscal year in which the data is updated. This provides reliable financing for projects that have already begun the work. These projects must close within 3 years to maintain their grandfathered status. The quartile or lowest 25% is based on municipal affordability scores and is then applied to both public water systems and clean water projects sponsored by wastewater systems serving more than one municipality. The State Fiscal Year 2025 and updated 2026 affordability scores for municipalities and water systems can be found on our WIP website in the affordability criteria section under guidance and forms. So that's the yellow circle and the yellow arrow. This document will show you how your score and affordability tiers may have changed between SFY25 and SFY26. Next slide. So please check out our website to learn more. We have a lot of valuable information on there. Again, the link is dep.nj.gov/WIIP. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them after our presentations. You can also reach out to the Water Bank at waterbankinfo@dep.nj.gov. Thank you.
Thank you, Samantha. Excellent presentation. So what I'm going to discuss today is some debt strategy for local governments. I'm going to layer on top of what Samantha has already said, but get into a little bit more detail on some of these items. Next slide. So some of you might not be familiar with the state revolving fund, so I'll give a brief explanation of what that is. How to know if the state revolving fund is right for your project, and then some tips on why you should fund through the state revolving fund instead of using municipal bonds. And throughout, I think it's important, Samantha kept mentioning that WIIP, the WIP, NJDEP WIP website, definitely refer to that back for additional information. So next slide, please. Next slide. Okay. Whoop, one too many. Okay. What is the State Revolving Fund? The State Revolving Fund is the financial assistance program in the United States that combines low-interest loans to states, municipalities, and eligible entities for construction and improvements of water infrastructure projects. So specifically in New Jersey, the SRF is the New Jersey Infrastructure Bank. The NJIB, IBank, it was formerly called the New Jersey Environmental Infrastructure Trust. As Samantha mentioned, the SRF fund is kind of co-managed by the IBank and the NJDEP. They work collaboratively to help projects through the process. And through this program, loans are made available to applicants, and there are a combination of subsidies from the federal government, the state of New Jersey, and repayments by other borrowers. Next slide, please. So why finance infrastructure using SRF funds? First thing, Samantha briefly touched on the intended use plan. As she said, the intended use plan changes every year. I always go back to the NJDEP WIP website to find out what it is for this particular year. So if I have a project in a certain category, I'm going to pull up the intended use plan. Samantha had given information on how to find that. But if you see off to the right is an image of what it has for funding packages in that particular calendar year. So I just, for discussion purposes, highlighted, you can see lead service line replacements. It indicates that you can get up to 80% principal forgiveness. And just for clarification for people who don't know, because the State Revolving Fund is a loan program, most things are not indicated as a grant. It indicates principal forgiveness, which basically is a forgiveness of some portion of the principal project cost. So for lead service lines, you can get anywhere from 50 to 80% principal forgiveness. There is a cap on the amount of principal forgiveness that any applicant can get. You can see in this table, $10 to $16 million. And then it indicates how much the program has available for that project year. And then what the percent split is for the DEP zero interest loan and the IBank AAA rated loan. So, excuse me, every year the DEP reassesses how they want to spend federal and state money across the different categories on both the drinking water side and the clean water side. And this table is probably the easiest way to get a snapshot of how your project compares and what types of funding you'll be eligible for. Of course, the DEP is always happy to meet with you and talk more specifically about your project, but this gives a good idea in a quick snapshot. So as Samantha also indicated, depending on whether your affordability score is, you may get more or less principal forgiveness than somebody else. So you definitely want to look up your particular municipality or the location where your project exists. Next slide, please. So again, why finance through the SRF funds? So there's lots of advantages of funding through the state revolving fund. One of those advantages is that there's short-term loan financing. It's 0% interest for up to 3 years. There's also no down payment for these loans. And some of the projects could be broken into operable units so that you can take advantage of multiple years of financing and multiple years of principal forgiveness. So for instance, lead service line projects are probably the easiest to break into operable units because you have a certain number of service lines to be replaced per year. You can bundle those up into one project, and that becomes an operable unit for that year. Larger treatment plant projects become a little bit more complicated as far as creating operable units. It is possible, but it takes a little bit more thought, and you have to decide whether breaking the project into operable units is actually the most efficient way to execute the project. But one of the things with the taking advantage of the state revolving fund and the short-term loan financing, if you have a very large project coming up, you can have to think about cash flow. And the state revolving fund really does help municipalities or utilities balance that cash flow and potential rate increases that could be needed to fund the project. So I put together just a little table that shows you. So let's say we have a project now, and I just, for all intents and purposes, put a $100 monthly bill for a customer. If you are self-funding the project, you need a down payment and you need to start paying back that loan right away. So you need a very steep increase in year one to fund your project. But if you're using state revolving funds, you can actually do incremental smaller increases over several years because you won't actually start repaying on that project until after you close your short-term loan and go into long-term financing. So that advantage has really helped a lot of utilities finance these big projects because they know that right now they certainly don't have the cash flow to be able to implement them. Next slide, please. So this graphic came in a little bit fuzzy, but I want to just explain to some folks what I do a lot of times when I'm looking at a new project and trying to decide, is the state revolving fund really good for me? If you go through to the New Jersey Infrastructure Bank, they have a WISE calculator. The WISE, it's the Water Infrastructure Savings Enabler Calculator. And that's the website, wise.h2loans.com. It will take you to a fillable form. You can see I just kind of started one for discussion purposes, and it'll ask you information about the individual completing the application, your contact information, but you really do need to know what is your borrower rating. So it could be your Fitch rating, Moody's rating, or S&P rating. So I just plugged in AA and AA2 for discussion purposes. And as you scroll through, it'll again ask a little bit of information about your project. It doesn't need specific information. The more important component of this calculator, obviously, is the financial aspects. So you can plug in the dollar value of the project, the total project cost. But then there's a drop down that talks about what you think your financial split is going to be. You can choose between a 50-50 DEP iBank loan, which, as Samantha had said, the 50% DEP loan is 0 interest, and the other 50% would be at the SRF AAA rated bond rating. But if you're a community right now trying to get funding, a lot of those projects are actually 75% DEP, 0 interest, and 25% market rate. So right off the bat, you can see there's an advantage to using SRF funds. Next slide, please. So once you put in that information, it will give you an output. when you use the WISE calculator, it helps give you a comparison estimate. It is only a budgetary estimate for discussion purposes, and it'll provide you a breakdown of the estimated annual debt service cost. So again, I apologize if this slide is a little bit small, but you can see in the comparison, if you go all the way to the bottom, that the savings of using the state revolving fund compared to traditional municipal bonds is over $4 million. So that calculation does not take into account any principal forgiveness that is offered by the SRF. So as I had mentioned a couple slides previously, if you have a lead service line program and you're getting $10 million, you'd be comparing a $20 million construction project versus a $30 million construction project. So the savings is actually even greater. So I definitely encourage people to use the WISE calculator when they're considering state revolving funds. The WISE calculator output gives much more information than just this. It does give it a breakdown, an annual cost of the debt service, so it can help you and your financial team plan appropriately. I believe that's my last slide. Next slide, please. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me and I will be here for questions. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Okay, maybe we can spotlight Samantha, Christine, and myself. Great. So we are definitely open for questions, and given the size of the group, I think, we're open to doing that either via the chat. So if you have some questions, please feel free to put them in, or if you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, please raise your hand. That would be great. And the raise your hand feature is under React. So I think if you open that, then you'll see how to raise your hand. One question I have is maybe for Samantha. You mentioned that the new intended use plan will be available soon. Do you have a sense of the timing in the next few weeks? Any insights you can share there? No. Okay.
Yeah, not really an exact timeline. We do anticipate it's going to be published before July 1st.
Okay.
But we don't have a timeline right now.
Okay. Lee has raised his hand. Go ahead, Lee.
Hey, so this was an amazing webinar. Thank you so much for offering such detailed information regarding the IUP, the SRF, because I know many folks had questions regarding the many details about it. So I have a two-part question. First part question is essentially on the idea of P&R grants, P&D grants. Are they part of the SRF process, or are they a separate portion of DEP? And how can communities utilize these funds to help prepare for larger infrastructure repairs or improvements, if possible? And then two, are we seeing smaller and medium-sized water systems coming to the system as much as larger-sized ones? And is there any further technical assistance engagement opportunities that we can do to further engage smaller to larger systems?
Thank you for your question, Lee. You might have to remind me of the second part after I go over the first part. But the planning and design grant loans are hosted, the applications are hosted through Sage, which is separate from the loan application software that the water bank uses, H2 Loans. You do have to be participating in the technical assistance program through the water bank to access those planning and design grants. There is no obligation to close on a loan in the future. There's no enforcement for that. But the grants are connected to capital improvement projects in the H2 loans system. So you do have to have at least step 2 of that loan application complete in order to apply for a grant. In terms of what is allowable for those planning and design costs, we can cover generally all planning and design up to authorization to advertise for capital improvement projects that the SRF typically allows as a cost. We also allow for preparation of permits in the grant because it's a state allocation, and so it's not subject to the same federal rules that restrict preparation of permits as a planning and design cost. So there is a little bit more flexibility with the grants. Do you want to re-ask your second question?
Yes. And the second part of the question is regarding the applicants and folks y'all have worked with water system wise, and this is open for both of y'all. We always hear about the large water systems going through the process because they have the resources and the staff capacity to do the forms and all of that. But what has been your experience with smaller and medium-sized water systems that may struggle with the capacity to do the paperwork or follow through, either as an applicant on the DEP side or perhaps as a client from Christine's perspective? How is that work different from a larger municipality?
Do you want to start, Christine?
Yeah, sure. So I've worked with small, medium, and large systems going through the SRF program. I can tell you that typically there is a cutoff of where going through the SRF doesn't make sense. I had generally been saying, anything under $1 million probably doesn't make sense. There is additional paperwork and review that NJDEP has to do with the SRF program. But as I had shown in my slide about the cost benefit, even a small system, and I would say especially a small system, should consider the SRF fund for a project that may seem insurmountable to them, because the SRF fund breaks down the loan repayments over 30 years. Often it's usually between 20 and 30 years. It's dependent on the average useful life of the item that is being capitalized. So breaking something, even a $30 million program, you break it down over 30 years, now it's $1 million a year. So it makes things more manageable for small systems. Larger systems almost use it all the time. They feather that into their capital improvement programs to take advantage of the principal forgiveness that's available. But there's a lot of other advantages to the SRF as far as everything being streamlined through DEP for the permitting review and getting the support that you need with those items. Not to mention the principal forgiveness, right? And the low interest loan component.
Yeah, and just to follow off of that, even with your smaller loans, if you are a disadvantaged community, our affordability packages offer 100% principal forgiveness. So you could essentially have all of your project costs paid for through that financing package. We also have the very small water systems financing package, which is 100% principal forgiveness. And you don't have to be a disadvantaged community to qualify for that. Our technical assistance program is also currently working on an assessment to identify very small water systems that are not disadvantaged communities that, are typically in need of more assistance. And so we are open to doing some outreach there or taking in requests from very small water systems that are not disadvantaged communities so that we can get them technical assistance as well as the planning and design grants, and that can help a lot.
So Since I'm not seeing any questions in the chat or any hands raised, one question that might be on people's minds is, folks are seeing what's happening at the federal level in terms of the budget discussions going on right now, between, the House and the Senate. And my understanding is that the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, also known as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, continues through federal fiscal year 26, which I think, could you just talk about some of the ongoing federal funding anticipated, or where there might be any concerns about shortfalls? I think, if I were a water system, I would want to have some assurance that if I'm applying to the program, that there is funding in the program. So that's kind of the genesis of my question.
Yeah, what I can say about that is that we have not seen any impacts to our available financing thus far, and we don't anticipate to see any impacts. We're all trying to be aware of what's going on all the time and communicate to our systems when there are changes. So definitely keep an eye on the intended use plans. The proposed intended use plans usually go out around November, December. So that will give you a preliminary idea of what funding looks like for the next year. But at this time, we're not expecting any impacts.
Okay. And my sense is that through the bipartisan infrastructure law, there's continues to be a strong priority around lead service lines and PFAS. Um, at at this stage, I guess all the American Rescue Plan Act funding that had been allocated for CSOs has been expended. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is.
Okay. Okay. All right. Any other, kind of shifts in SRF policies that have changed that are worth highlighting at this time, or is the affordability criteria the major shift that you want to talk about right now?
Yeah, I think the affordability criteria and the technical assistance are definitely the biggest changes. They offer new opportunities, and may have, some impacts to communities.
Okay. Well, I'm not seeing any additional questions in the chat, and folks aren't necessarily raising their hands. So I think at this point, I'll go ahead and we can wrap things up unless folks want to highlight additional, um, benefits of considering the SRF or highlights in the upcoming IUP. As Samantha said, the State Fiscal Year 26 IUP will start in July. So yeah, I think we will go ahead and end here then, and just appreciate you both taking the time to be on the webinar. If folks have, questions, please feel free to reach out to either Samantha, Christine, or myself, or the New Jersey Future Funding Navigator team. And we will be posting this recording, as I said earlier. And yeah, we are also planning a third and final webinar in the Debt is Not a Bad Word series. So we're anticipating that that will be sometimes in the fall. So please keep an eye out for that. And thanks everybody for joining us today. We appreciate it.